Perfect. Thanks, Mike. Yeah, so we are going to look at what's new in Sage 200 today. It's a bit generic title. There's a couple of versions we're going to cover, as Mike said. We haven't done these for a while, so I've picked some specific versions to look at, which will become apparent on the next slide. As Mike said, I'm Chris Ashcroft, pre-sales manager. So I work with our account management team and our implementation and support teams to do everything around product, partners, enablement, things like that. So, welcome to all those that have just joined us. We are recording the session, so we're just gonna everyone come in. I'm just gonna put you on kind of mute and turn videos off. And then any questions you've got, just feel free to pop them into the chat, and we'll pick those up at the end. We've got a bit of time for Q&A then if there's anything that comes up. Great. So Sage 200, what's new? So the first place we're going to look is actually at the Sage 200 life cycle. So Sage 200 have always had Sage have always had a life cycle for Sage 200 versions, but they've made this a bit more clear and a bit more apparent in recent versions. There's a big drive on adding new functionality to the Sage 200 product, and so doing that means that they want to end support on older products as the life comes around, if you like, and just means that people aren't kind of missing out on new functionality, and it means that Sage aren't having to maintain potentially old technology as well in doing that. So as we can see on here, we've got a matrix of versions that's up to date with the latest release that we've got, which is also covered in this slide deck. So what Sage are doing now is they're supporting versions for 2 years on full support, and then an extended support of a year, which basically gives it around 3 years of support per release. What that means is if a product version that you're on has gone into end of support by Sage, Innov8 will still provide support where we can for that piece of for that version. But if we need to refer anything to Sage to get their support with anything, they may require that you're on a supported version before they can provide us with assistance and kind of help us with any cases. There are some products on here that have been flagged as product retirement. If you're on one of these, Sage probably isn't working for you anyway. So they've been put into product retirement due to version specific limitations. So most of these were hit with the TLS licensing changes that Sage made. So a lot of people had upgrades to get you onto a more recent version to work with Sage's new security on their licensing. So those versions were all end of life, if you like, product retirement for those versions. So what I'm going to do today is I'm basically just going to run through the new features that have been added in the currently supported versions. So we're actually going to start with 2020 R2 and then move up to date. If you're on a older version, something like so say summer 2017 remastered, there will be additional features that have been added in the winter, spring, summer, all the way through 2019, 2020 R1. Those new features are available in the help and user guides, which I'll briefly talk about today, and also in the roadmap that I'm also going to talk about today. So there may be additional functions that you would get with upgrading in addition to what I'm going to mention in this presentation. So if we start at the bottom of the list then with 2020 R2, can you believe actually the first or the oldest supported version at the minute was actually back when Brexit was happening? It seems like an age ago now. But one of the things that they added into the 2020 R2 release was some support for postponed VAT accounting, some new default VAT rates to help with the Brexit transition. And at the same time, Sage actually sold Sage Pay to Elevon, and that was rebranded as a Payo. So there's some changes in product in terms of references to where Sage Pay may be referenced. It just changed to online payment settings and things like that. But from a functional perspective, there wasn't really many changes in this version. It was more just around those VAT changes. In terms of compatibility of software, this is also something that regularly comes up with upgrades. As old versions of Windows software comes around and new versions come out, they drop support for those older unsupported or legacy versions of the server operating system, the database SQL Server that's on there as well. That's another reason why Sage kind of are working forward now with this supported version matrix, because it means that they can embrace new technologies by making sure that people are using up-to-date versions of server Windows, of SQL, things like that. So with 2020 R2, this is kind of our point in the sand. So for this one and the next one, you'll see it broken down like this. So we've got Windows Server 2012, 2012 R2, 2016, 2019. The Windows versions that work with this are Windows 7, Windows 8.1, and Windows 10, but not Windows 11 at this point in this document, and then SQL versions on there as well at the bottom. So we had a 2020 R2 release, and then we moved on and we had a 2021 R1 release. So Sage's aim, and still the aim at the minute, is to have 2 releases a year, one around early year spring, one around autumn time, winter. There's a bit of a gap in the history, but they're kind of pushing forward with that structure as well going forward now. So with 2021 R1, this was probably one of the most key releases for Sage in recent years. So what 2021 R1 added into the software was a new web portal functionality. So this is effectively Sage's goal for the upcoming versions, the coming years. This is really what Sage is trying to focus on, and this is the ability to perform all of the functions that you currently do in the desktop version, which would be the everyday version or using of Sage 200, in a web browser, to allow people to be working on Sage 200 from anywhere, on multiple different device types, not kind of stuck on a Windows PC, but also been able to kind of do everything day to day, and have effectively a cloud experience without needing a true cloud native solution. I think COVID kind of showed everybody that we need to be able to access these systems from home. One way to do that is through hosting. Another way is potentially putting that server in a externally facing kind of environment and making these web portal functions available. So when this was initially released in 2021 R1, they rolled this out to very basic sales ledger, purchase ledger, nominal, cash book, and stock. You could mainly create accounts or records in these ledgers, and then in the sales and purchase ledger, you could do some transacting and some customer and supplier inquiries, but you couldn't kind of do any kind of main adjustments or write-offs on stock or complex processes. The other thing Sage did in this version was they actually made Excel reporting free of charge. So if you don't use it, there is an area on the menu that may need turning on called Excel reporting, which allows you to do spreadsheet refreshes of data. There's about 20 reports in there that look at different areas. I've got an example of one on the screen. They kind of draw themselves as pivot tables. So this is just a customer list effectively with the analysis codes as pivots or filters. But there are transaction-based reports as well in here. There are nominal-based reports in there as well that may be useful. So following 2021 R1, we didn't actually get a 2021 R2 release. Sage were really key on getting more of this web portal functionality sorted, so they didn't do a 2021 R2 release, and we moved straight onto a 2022 R1. So in 2022 R1, some key functionality was added really that made these web portal users a bit more of a game changer. So they exposed that to sales orders, sales quotes, the ability to get a sales order list on there, the ability to do things with quotes, adding expiry dates on quotes, alternative stock items on quotes. They added some of the cross-selling stuff that's in Sage onto quotes as well, in both the desktop and into the web portal as well. So at this point then, what that meant is people could actually start keying orders in, potentially when they were with customers, just inquiring on orders when they were with customers as well, which is quite powerful to be able to do. What I would say about the web portal at the minute is, if this is sounding like something you want to use, you just have to bear in mind that currently any additional modules you've got, any bespoke, so anything from any of the product partners, Sycon, Dracer, for example, Eureka, any Innov8 add-ons or bespoke, they're currently not available in the web portal. It's for a completely vanilla, if you like, area of the system. So if you don't have any customizations within sales order processing, for example, then you can go ahead and start using that. You may need some training and things with our consultancy team and getting it set up, but you can go ahead and start using that. Currently, the web users require a web user license. That's not a full Sage 200 license. It's a reduced license cost. But even if you're a full Sage 200 user, you have to have this web user license assigned to be able to use the web portal. So in addition to the features that were added, there was quite a few changes in terms of compatibility with 2022 R1. So support was added for Windows 11, Windows Server 2022, SQL Server. They released a Service Pack 3 for 2016, so they removed support for Service Pack 2 and just made it Service Pack 3 instead. They added support for Microsoft Office, but they removed Windows 7, which was kind of legacy anyway at this point. You know, most people had moved off it. There's not getting security updates anyway. They removed Server 2012 and R2, Office 2013-16, and some Internet Explorer Reliance was also removed, with Microsoft announcing that the Internet Explorer was no longer. So if you were to look to move to 2022 R1, right now you would be looking to make sure that you fit in with these changes to the requirements. So if you're on 2016, for example, now, then you would definitely need to look to move on to a new version of Windows Server, and you may need to look onto a new version of SQL, for example. 2022 R2, so this was just the end of last year. So in autumn of last year, more functionality again was added to the web portal. There's a bit of a theme here. You know, there's a big push on this web portal, getting more people access in browsers and on different devices. So they added the ability to confirm goods dispatched within the web portal, add tracking information to dispatch. That was a feature that was added in both the desktop and in the web portal. So that allows you to go into a dispatch record, and you can set up a predefined list of couriers. You can select those. You can type in consignment numbers. It's not an integration. It's just somewhere to be able to store this data effectively. And you can click through and put a tracking link and things in there as well. They did also add some legislation requirements just for Intrastat, particularly in Ireland, around selecting country of origin to be able to do Intrastat and submissions. In terms of compatibility, nothing was changed at this point. So everything that you've just seen from 2022 R1, that's still valid for this version as well. Which then really moves us up to the latest release that we've just had, maybe about a month ago now, which was 2023 R1. So again, front and center, web portal, additional functionality. There's been some functions added around alerts on supplier accounts. So we've always been able to do alerts on customer accounts, which is where you can put a message up that pops up maybe when you're entering an order. Or we've been able to do that for a good while anyway. They've now added that to supplier accounts. They've added onto the lists in the web portal that if a account has an active memo on it, a note, a memo, then that's shown on there as well. So you can identify that. The supplier alert function has been added to the desktop as well. And then they've done quite a lot around kind of stock. So with the ability to do mass addition of warehouses to multiple items, the ability to import, export, update item locations. They've increased the part number field to 60 characters. That's actually just to bring it more in line with Sage 50. That was increased a little while ago to 60 characters. And so from a migration perspective, Sage have increased that to support a migration path there. Customers and suppliers, so supplier alerts, that's been added so into the desktop as well. So even if you're not using the web portal, you can add those supplier alerts. And then they've added some settings around default allocation dates. So you can select the allocation date anyway when putting on a payment, for example, in a ledger or allocating transactions together. But they've added a setting which allows you now to define whether that allocation date as default should be the date of the payment, for example, or today's date. So you can now change that setting, and that will control how that allocation date is driven. Quite a big demand for this next one, actually. I didn't realize how many people were waiting for this, really, although I think it was one of my things on the Ideas Hub, actually, is the ability to import vatable journals. We've been able to enter vatable journals for a good while now, but we can import journals that required VAT detail on them. That can now be performed in the latest release. And there's also the ability to print prior year journals. So that's just when you're entering a journal, there's a print button, but there wasn't on the prior year journal option. That's now there, so you can just get a copy of that prior year journal on a report before you save it if you want. Other things they've added, I quite like this top one here. In various areas of the system, purchase order processing, sales order processing, the analysis codes that used to be at the bottom of the delivery and invoicing tab in a small kind of square that you had to scroll up and down on if you had 20 in use, has been moved into its own tab, which just makes it a much cleaner view. So you'll be able to just view all of your analysis codes in a single tab rather than having to try and resize the screen to get them to fit at the bottom of the delivery and invoicing screen. That's quite a welcome change from me, definitely. The ISO code for Turkish lira has been changed from TRL to TRY as default. And then the ability to save VAT return year end and bank rec to Spooler when used in preview. So these are all reports that once you've generated them in Report Designer, you can't regenerate that document. Can't go in and do like a reprint of it, of these documents that are generated through these processes. And so whilst you could always, when in preview, hit the spool button at the top of the Report Designer screen, nobody ever seemed to see it. It's very hidden, actually. It just says the word spool. So what Sage have done is on these key reports, the three that you see on the screen, when you run that process in Sage now, it will pop up and say effectively what you can see on the screen. So they're not reprintable reports. Would you like to save a copy of them to the spooler? So that will still generate the report and pop it up on the screen, but it will also save a copy of that report automatically into the spooler. So you can go in and reprint that as you require. In addition, then to the features that we've got in 2023 R1, we have got some compatibility changes again. So support for Windows 8.1 has been removed with this latest version, meaning that effectively we've got Windows 10 and Windows 11 support there now. Windows Server 2016 has been removed. Again, just meaning now that the two options for server are Server 2019 and 2022. Both, relatively modern. They are modern platforms, so that's why that's been done. And SQL Server 2016 has been removed, but SQL Server 2022 has been added into there on compatibility as well. So in terms of these new features, a lot of the functionality that's coming into the system now is being heavily driven by the user base. Obviously, there's a big drive on the web portal side, with the ultimate goal being that all of the functionality that's available in the desktop version will be available in the web portal version, so people can choose what version they want to use. In addition to that, it is coming where it will be possible for third-party ISV developers such as Innov8, Sycon, Dracer, Eureka, to be able to customize and develop our own web portal forms. That's due out at the minute in the release that's due with 2023 R2. Obviously, we wouldn't have everything ready then to be able to start using that. But what it will mean is that we should start being able to redo our bespoke into those web forms if people want to use the web forms, redo some of our in-range modules into those web forms as well for people that want to use that platform instead of the desktop. So in terms of where these requests come from, so in Sage, at the top of your Sage application, there'll be a little yellow light bulb, and that will take you to the Ideas Hub for Sage 200 UK and Ireland. Just got some screenshots of it here. So this is where you can go on. You can see what people have been requesting. There is a search on here, so you can search for if somebody's already requested your idea. You can submit ideas, you can upvote ideas, you can comment on ideas. Sage regularly comments, so you'll see that it's quite an old one actually that I've got here, but the ability to make nominal accounts inactive, that didn't used to be in the solution. That was something that I put on in 2015 actually, and that was added into the solution already. But actually in the comments they were asking about how we think this should work, the best way of these things working. They're really keen to get feedback from actual users on how you want these things to start working in the system. The other area that you can get to, just a quick Google gets you there really. If you just type in Sage 200 roadmap, you'll get to this Sage 200 roadmap page. And there's 3 sections on this. So there's delivered, launching soon, and the future. So delivered, as you scroll down that, effectively I'll have each version release and what was included in that. So you'll see some brief details of what I've mentioned today. But more information is available in the help. So in these newer versions of Sage 200, the help is an online web page, so it's not necessarily version specific. So again, in the top of your Sage 200, you'll have a little question mark, and on all of the forms that pop up, all the screens will have a question mark. If you click on that, that will open the Sage 200 help documentation. And under Getting Started, there's a What's New page on there, which again will tell you what's new in every version that's been released to date. So just be aware that the version that you're on might not be the version that has that feature in. You just need to be aware of that, because that help file does include all functionality in it. It's not version specific. On the launching soon, we can see what Sage have got planned for 2023 R2. Now that they've released 2023 R1, this will start getting built up. So we can see that web screen customization, the hope is that will be out by the end of the year, so that we can start, as I say, doing bespoke and customizing those web forms. And SQL 2017 is also planned to be retired. So if you're looking at doing an upgrade now, you'd probably be best looking at moving on to SQL 2019, maybe 2022, just to make sure that you're kind of on a supported platform. Obviously, as always, it's best to go on to the latest supported version, because that potentially means that your next upgrade, you might not need to change any of that core kind of Windows or SQL version. Keep it active for a little bit longer. And then into the future, you can see some things that Sage have got in for active consideration for future versions as well. So extending invoice payments, on hold statuses, so being able to kind of stop sales order transactions when an account is on hold. They have links through to the Ideas Hub, or the Sage City, as they call it, areas that I showed you previously. So you can click on the link and it'll take you through to that idea, and you can upvote it. Equally, if it's something that Sage are actively kind of consulting on or working on putting into the solution, you'll see on invoice payments, there's actually a button to take a survey. So Sage would have a survey on there where they're asking for feedback, and it'll be function specific. So it'll be asking you about if you use it at the minute, how you expect it to work or how you want it to work. And then Sage will collate all that and use that to develop that feature into a version. It might be next year, might be the year after potentially. And in terms of those upgrades, one thing just wanted to make everyone aware of, just in case you weren't, is in terms of the Sage environment, of course, it's an on-premise solution, which means it needs to be installed on a server somewhere. But that server doesn't need to be in a room in your office. We do offer a cloud-hosted environment, so it's not putting the application effectively into a cloud, true cloud solution. It's actually allowing you to use the power of that on-premise solution, but we put that server into a cloud environment. What that means is, obviously, you don't have the overhead of a server. You can access it from any device, anywhere. We've actually made some changes recently which kind of leverage the Microsoft solution a bit better, so that actually there's the potential now where our Sage in a Box users will be able to start using Sage 200 in a web browser. So rather than having a full screen desktop on their screen, they'll be able to go to a web browser, log into Sage 200 in there, and continue to use all of the functionality on the machine. Obviously, it's secure. But what it also does mean is, if we have Sage in a Box customers that are upgrading, and obviously it's looking like every kind of 3 years, that's the cycle. Hopefully everyone's already in that cycle, but if not, kind of moving to it. Obviously, what that could mean from an IT infrastructure perspective is a requirement to be getting new operating systems, new SQL versions with each upgrade that you're doing, because actually that 3 years fits a little bit in with kind of what Microsoft are looking to do as well. Now, from a Sage in a Box perspective, we make sure that when we upgrade you and a new version is required of the server or SQL for a support perspective, we will put you onto that platform as part of the upgrade. It's not an additional cost. That server and SQL is included in the Sage in a Box, which just means that we can make sure you're on the latest required versions when you have an upgrade. And it also means you don't have to be thinking about kind of spinning up a test system as you would on your environment, because we'll do that as part of that upgrade process. So hopefully I covered everything. It's a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but as I say, there are more information in the help and user guides. Does anybody have any questions? I'm just going to see if there is anything coming through on the chat, but hopefully I've been quite concise and maybe nobody's asked anything. Perfect. No, they haven't. But if anybody does have any questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. And obviously, if you want to discuss any upgrades or kind of looking at any solutions that we've got, then your account manager can help.